we can apply our theory. So yin and yang, right? You can see the climate crisis in some ways as deficient heat, right? We've been plundering the yin and yang of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a situation of deficient heat. We also see yin and yang are starting to separate, right? Our planet is no longer in homeostasis. Yin and yang is starting to come apart. So we think about that with our patients. We can think about the planet in that way. Super useful lens.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological. Years ago, I worked in high tech. My job was to help people solve problems that they couldn't solve by themselves using a technology that they didn't understand. Today, my job is exactly the same. I help people solve problems that they cannot solve on their own using a technology they don't understand. It's just that instead of working with computer and business systems, I'm working with the human body and spirit. When I look back on the arc of years and paths that I followed, I can see that nothing gets left behind. It might seem that way in any given moment when making a decision results in following a new course or letting go of what has been supportive. However, when looking back through time, it's obvious how the issues that had me dropping out of college are as alive in me now as when I realized that the program I was in was not going to get me to where I really wanted to go. That knack for choosing my own path over the off-the-shelf program that was, air quotes here, good enough for everyone else, is, if anything, more alive and vibrant in my 60s as it was when I clocked into my 20s. That aspect of Jing essence that was not afraid to strike off on a trail that might not work has been a reliable catalyst that seems to show up whenever I'm considering a change that holds the potential of a big upside, but also carries the possibility of being wrong in unforeseeable and likely painful ways. Change is a curious thing. There are those severing moments, gateways, that swing a door open, and once walked through, it disappears. There is no way back. And at the same time, life paths are as circular as seasons. It's not unusual to find ourselves coming back to a set of circumstances or difficulties that seem oddly familiar. And it's not because of failure, but that another turn on the spiral of growth and change has taken place. This is not to say there are not issues, perhaps deeply rooted and a reliable source of suffering, and you'll meet these themes time and again if they have any kind of gravity that your fears, biases, and previous solutions tend to orbit around. There are things that perhaps we noodle on for an entire lifetime. And with each spiral of growth, a little more is revealed about who we are in relationship to those issues. And then there are the lessons and skills we've acquired along the way. Well-crafted solutions tend to become part of our toolbox. And for those problems in life that sort of rhyme with one another, we might already have skills and perspectives that can be readily applied. I didn't know that my knack in high school for independent study would cause me so much trouble in college, and then turn out to be a vital part of learning from clinical experience. It has taken years to realize that the out-of-left-field ideas that easily spring to mind for me and were not valued in the technical world of procedure and protocol were not something that was wrong with me, but rather a resource better suited to being agilely self-employed. Nothing gets left behind. The accumulation of life experience seasons us in ways that are both surprising and oddly familiar. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AcuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
One of the turning points in my first run of college was reading the dire warnings from the Club of Rome in their book, The Limits to Growth. Their new at the time computer models showed that humanity was on a crash course with disaster, and moreover, it was already too late. College is great because it holds the potential of smashing your ideas of the world along with the assumptions and beliefs that got us through childhood and adolescence. Being exposed to other ways of thinking and other belief systems can be as disorienting as it is exciting. Having to sit with the discomfort of finding the world does not work the way you were told it does, and having to build the fortitude to know and stand up for your own perspective, it is indeed a tempering process that, if it doesn't rattle you to your bones, then you've likely wasted the opportunity that college offers. Finding out about how us humans were sowing the seeds of our destruction, made me nihilistic and angry. It would take me decades to work it out that troubles are also opportunities and a shot at genuine creativity. Because the troubles we have are so often the unintended consequences of the good intentions of our predecessors. How we are in this world and the good intentions we have for what we leave to our children, they're often full of blind spots that will not affect us, but certainly will affect them. In this conversation with Nishanga Bliss, we discuss climate change, medicine, and electronic activism. As with so many of the troubles that arise from complex, interconnected systems, it is impossible to map one-to-one correspondences. A seemingly small input can have dramatic systemic effects. Not so unlike a well-placed acupuncture needle. Let's get into this conversation with Nishanga on one of the biggest challenges of our time. Nishanga Bliss, welcome to Geological.
Thank you so much.
We are tackling just a small topic today, climate change. So we were introduced by a former guest of the podcast, Dennis, and he said, you should talk to Nishanga about Chinese medicine and climate change. And I thought, all right, Chinese medicine does a lot. I don't even know where to begin talking about climate change. So I'm really delighted to have you here. I'm curious to see what you're seeing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's only a small topic. Yeah, right? But I think there's so much to say about it. But just starting with like our lens, or really when we train in this medicine, right? We learn to look through multiple lenses. Is it yin or yang? Is it 5 element? Is it 8 entity, 12 channel? So those lenses where we can look at condition with the patient and consider it from multiple angles, that perspective is so essential for the times we're living in. We can use those lenses to look at something huge like climate change, and we have a better chance of making our way through that, getting a perspective on it than a lot of people. We can apply our theory. So yin and yang, right? You can see the climate crisis in some ways as deficient heat, right? We've been plundering the yin and yang of the planet. Mm-hmm. And so we have a situation of deficient heat. We also see yin and yang are starting to separate, right? Our planet is no longer in homeostasis. Yin and yang is starting to come apart. So we think about that with our patients. We can think about the planet in that way. Super useful lens. We can think about 5 element. We can think about Jing. We can see oil as the Jing of the planet. I got a lot of ideas from Brendan Kelly. He wrote the Yin and Yang of Climate Crisis. One of the few people in our field really stepping into this, and definitely maybe someone you should meet. But he wrote about, you can see oil as the Jing of the planet. We've been extracting it and burning it. So we're disturbing the 3 treasures, this plundering of the Jing. Again, it's going to this argument of kind of deficient heat. So we have a lens to look at the problem, or multiple lenses. And then there are so many things in our medicine that can be part of the solution. Slow medicine.
It is slow medicine. Well, sometimes slow medicine, sometimes fast medicine.
Right.
It's very curious because sometimes our medicine works really, really fast, like miraculously fast. People are blown away, and we are too, when we see just how quickly a change can happen. And then there are those slower miracles, as a buddy of mine likes to say, that they take time to unfold.
And that fast change is quite often accomplished with acupuncture, yeah?
I've seen it happen with herbs in an acute situation.
Yeah.
But generally because it's an acute situation.
Right. It can be so dramatic. True. With acupuncture, I think that it's such an amazing tool for the moment we're living in because it can change consciousness rather quickly. And we need a change in consciousness so desperately. And we can do that
So you say that acupuncture changes consciousness, and I'm with you on that. You can feel something change in the room sometimes with people, right? Or they come out of a treatment and they're kind of like, what was that?
Yeah.
It's like, what did you just put into me?
Right.
And you and I both know we put nothing into them. We called something out of them.
Yeah.
And I get it on a like personal level, right? We're helping people with their health. How does that work on that more global macro level?
Yeah. It's a great thing to ponder, but I see our medicine's founded on the microcosm reflecting the macrocosm.
Mm.
Yeah, when we read the Neijing, it's talking about the climate, right? We can translate Qi as climate, the 6 climates.
We do talk about that, Liu Jing, or Liu Qi, right? The 6 Qi.
Yeah, right? The
Yeah.
6 Qi. So we can think of Qi as climate. And when we're used to making these tiny little adjustments, right? Acupuncture, it's this tiny thing. You're sticking a tiny needle in someone's ear. It's an amazing change in consciousness. So this small adjustment affecting a global system. And we're working with the microcosm of the human body. But our theory, our perspective is always connecting that, relating that microcosm to the macrocosm, which is the planet. I mean, the medicine evolved on observing the natural world. Now we can see the natural world in such a big lens, right? In the time of the Neijing, they saw the environment around them. Now we have a global perspective and we can see the imbalances.
Yeah. Well, plus, we've got technologies that extend our senses. So we can go and look really small. We can look through a microscope or even an electronic scanning microscope, see aspects of nature we couldn't see before. We can look outwards into the cosmos and see what we couldn't see before.
And we can communicate with people around the world or the country. And we can access almost all of human knowledge through our phones. I mean, there's a lot of low quality information, but there's a lot of amazing information. So,
well, I was going to say we can also access human idiocy.
yes.
Let's just call it what it is. I mean, there is knowledge, but we also can access instantly a lot of insanity.
Oh, yeah.
And delusion.
And delusion.
Yeah.
But it is an amazing moment of connectivity where the average person can take a global perspective. The average human on the planet can consider what's going on a global level. That's a pretty new thing in terms of human evolution.
True.
And I think that gives us an opportunity, especially with our medicine, the way we can affect consciousness. Can we even suggest to patients that shift in consciousness where they feel more aligned also is connecting them to kind of something about the state of the planetary system? I mean, that's built into our medicine already, but maybe we can move into articulating that. I remember during the Occupy protests, remember the movement of the Occupy protests? I forget how long ago. Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, wasn't that just after the financial meltdown, like 2008, 2009, something like that?
Exactly. So that was happening. So I'm here in California. So down in Oakland, there was a really active part of that movement going on. And there were people occupying in front of the city hall in Oakland. And we went and offered ear acupuncture. We did pop-up ear acupuncture clinics there among the protesters who were sitting in. And so we did not a protocol, right? So, but the whole narrative was anti-capitalism of this movement, right? So we kind of we didn't first say it, but then after we got feedback, we framed it as an anti-capitalist treatment. Because not a protocol, it evolves as an anti-addiction treatment, but people will say, I feel so balanced and complete in myself. Not only do I not want to do drugs or alcohol, I don't want to go shopping, right? So it was so interesting. So it's like you're going to offer this treatment and we know it creates a shift. It comes out of a certain context, but also how we frame it, the context we do it in creates, a different result. So there was something so beautiful about offering that treatment in those settings, in that collective setting, with a different framing about, wow, after this treatment, you don't feel like you need something from the outside to make yourself feel complete.
Don't need something from the outside to make yourself feel complete. So is that really anti-capitalism, or is that somehow dealing with like the greed and discomfort of the human heart?
Yeah, it's even bigger than anti-capitalism. I mean, it's a spiritual shift, but it's also part of our way out of what's going on with climate, right? We're living in a way that's out of balance with nature. We're taking natural resources and we are using them in a way that's disturbing our environment to an extent. It's throwing it completely out of whack. There's a problem with the way we're living. I mean, this is what the Yellow Emperor in Chibo were talking about, right? The Yellow Emperor is like, why do people not live as long as they used to? And Chibo says, oh, well, they used to pay attention to the seasons. Now they're out of balance. They drink wine as if it were water. No wonder they look old at 50 and die soon after. I hate that passage being over 50, right? But that basic idea of Chinese medicine of like, what happened? We lost the way of balance. Chinese medicine can offer us a return to the way. Now we've gone so far off balance, but it's the same message that the medicine gives us a glimpse of this balance. This, what does it mean to respect yin?
It does give us, it definitely does give us a glimpse. And like you were saying, from the inside.
Yeah.
We get this other glimpse from the inside. One of the things that I've noticed, and this is just kind of me living my life, you know, as a human being and muddling through it, which I suspect many of us do, I have so often found in my own life that I've got something and it's troublesome to me. I want it to be different. I want to change. And I rise to that change. And I make changes. And I set my life on a different course. And that solves the problem that's in front of me. But what I didn't realize at that moment is I have just sown the seeds of the next problem that I'm going to face. That I get somewhere down the road, 5, 7, 10, 20 years, depending on the cycle. And the problem that is now in front of me is because of the choice that I made previously.
That's
You know what I mean?
I totally understand.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I look at our world. At the moment, it is damn cold in St. Louis, Missouri. It was 7 degrees Fahrenheit when I woke up here this morning. But in my home, it's springtime, right? Because the thermostat is set to 69 degrees. It's springtime. It's like a perfect spring day in my home. I am so grateful that we have natural gas because I have springtime in my home. I think back 200 years, people didn't have that. I think back to when I lived in Asia, not all that long ago, and people are a little bit more hardy. And so like, oh yeah, it's cold here for a couple months out of the year, but we don't have heat in our homes because they just didn't.
Yeah.
And so many of the problems that we have, you know, the lovely car I get to drive, my house that's set to springtime, my refrigerator full of food, for God's sake, are all wonderful improvements over life 200 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we got here in this moment with all of the best intentions, you know, and I think about my own personal life with all the best intentions. How many times have I run myself into a wall? Now I've got this new problem. So I'm curious, how do we address that the place where we are? It didn't come from malice. I mean, maybe there's some greed in there. But I think generally speaking, humans are trying to make things a little bit better. And we often find ways to make it better and then find that our solutions, brings a new problem. How do we work with that?
How do we work with that? That's a big one. And it's tricky with this because humans have known that this was going to happen for a long time.
Have we? How do we know?
We have, but there's a female scientist, and I'm forgetting her name, who did an experiment where she demonstrated the greenhouse effect, like something like over 100 years ago. She could see that what we're doing in terms of combustion is going to heat up the atmosphere. So, the science has been there, but it's also been buried. Especially the fossil fuel companies were very aware what they were doing was going to, with oil extraction, was going to create a climate crisis, but they buried that information, just like Philip Morris and the cigarette companies buried the information about smoking. We have known. Now it's blatantly obvious. Now most humans on the planet are affected by it. So it's out there now. But for a long time, the information was known, but really buried. So what do we do? Is it just part of being life on Earth, life on the planet, being a human being that you will always create these imbalances? I think there's an opportunity to just massively shift the way we do everything. Greta Thunberg is one of my heroes. She says to change everything, we need everyone. Right? We all need to be part of it. So it could be these individual changes around slowing down, slow medicine, slow food, slow fashion, slow travel. Interesting thing about the concentrated fuels, like fossil fuels, they enable us to just extract more energy quicker, do things more quickly.
I know, and I have to tell you, I love it.
I
do.
It's
I
wonderful.
love it.
Yeah.
To be able to get on an airplane 14 hours later, I'm at my favorite night market in Taiwan. Oh, man, it's so good.
It's so good. I know. And flying is a tough one, Michael, because only a very small percentage of people on the planet do it. Less than, I think it's like actually 3%, maybe 10% of humans fly. And the impact of flying is so outsized, right? If you look at your personal carbon footprint, flying is like one of the biggest contributors. But no, it's so hard. How do we change?
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. It is hard because someone like me, I don't want to give up flying. Yeah. I love it. It's so great. And it's allowed me to live life in some amazing ways. I get it that not everybody gets to do that. And I wonder sometimes, we were talking before we started rolling tape. We both have teenagers at home.
Yeah.
Teenagers are so cool. They're just so open to the world, and they have no problem with asking really bothersome questions.
Right.
So I got this 17-year-old here right now. And the other day we're talking about things and how everything in the world seems to be so incredibly poorly distributed, and you have wealth concentrated in places, and some places are great and some are not, and some people have privilege and some have less, and some people have natural talent that others don't have, and some people have like wicked, amazing intelligences, and some people are like very, very simple, and we're all so very different. And so we're talking about privilege the other day, and she goes, well, remember, she's 17, okay? She goes, well, here's what I think. If you have privilege, you should make sure you're using it well. I think she's right. It's like, if you have a leg up, well, damn it, leverage that. Question is,
leverage that.
How are we leveraging and what are we doing about it?
leverage that and leverage it for on the behalf of good, right? Like leverage it on behalf of good. And that comes to us as practitioners. That's one reason why I really want to bring this conversation to our space as practitioners. What do we have as practitioners? People trust us. They actually listen. They want to know what we think they should do. They're asking for our advice. They trust us. And this is an interesting thing in research. And this is one reason why I know Western doctors who are really entering the climate conversation. And they're saying, I work with a group called Climate Health Now. They're national, but they're very big in California. And they're all Western providers, mostly doctors, a lot of pediatricians who are really engaging the climate fight. And they're sharing that people actually trust what doctors say more than politicians, more than government agencies, more than almost any other entity in society. People do trust medical providers. Actually, they trust nurses more than doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And we're probably closer to nurses, or in this research, they didn't ask about, do you trust your acupuncturist? They weren't thinking about us. But, here we are, physicians. We have this beautiful relationship with our clients. They trust us and they're asking us for advice. So that's a privilege that we have, right? We've accrued that through our training, through our diligence. We have a privilege in terms of influence. And I think that's something we can use for good. So I'm really curious, can we engage conversations about climate even with our patients, or can we make connections between their personal healing journey and a planetary healing journey? I think, to me, that's very exciting about being a practitioner and thinking, like, what does that look like? I'm playing with it, but I can't say I've really mastered that.
Is it something that you've used in your clinic? Are there experiences that you've had with patients where they're working through something and it very much resonates with climate and what's happening there, and that you've been able to draw that connection, or maybe they've been able to draw that connection in a way that's been beneficial to their healing? Can you give us an example?
So here in California, one of the most obvious effects of the climate crisis is around our air quality.
And that the damn state's on fire.
Exactly. So we have air quality from pollution, but then the damn state's on fire, right? So we have a totally imbalanced ecosystem. And it's affecting our lives. I mean, in 2020, fall 2020, we woke up and the sky was red all day long. You could barely see the sun.
I remember the pictures. It was like Armageddon.
It was so freaky. It was really, I felt a sense of sort of a deep panic. And I think most people who were out and about that day felt that. It was just like, it just felt so wrong. If you've been around an eclipse, right? It's really cool, but it's an eclipse. But it was like that light, that eerie light, and then with the red tone all day. It was so unsettling on a very deep level. So we have real issues with air quality. So many activities that my son plays ultimate frisbee. So many games were canceled when the air quality goes over 100. When the index goes over 100, they cancel the game. So it's dangerous, right? So it's really impacted our life. I see clients with more lung problems.
Of course.
Right? I've got a client who it's sort of long-term spleen Qi deficiency, liver overacting on spleen type of patterns, but who got COVID and then long COVID, and with all this exposure to air pollution, now has asthma. And I'm like, oof, I don't think you would have gotten asthma. I mean, I think there's a perfect storm. I see the COVID as a symptom of the climate crisis, right? The climate crisis, really the root of it, and COVID is the branch. It's a branch that's obviously profoundly affecting our lives. But with this person, and I see just the impact of our poor air quality on clients. And I do make that connection and I talk about it with them. I talk about filtering their air, but I also try to engage that of what can we do collectively about this issue?
Mm-hmm. What kind of response do you get?
It's not unlike humans in general.
Being as we're humans, after all.
It's so easy to be overwhelmed. The scope is really hard to grok of how can what I do impact the whole planet? So the scope is difficult, and that's I've been coming to. And so also I've been teaching about this. So I teach our local acupuncture college here in Berkeley, the Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine College, and I've been teaching more and more climate science in our master's program. And And I'm finding different ways to teach about it, but the most common response is overwhelm. The more people learn about it, the more they get overwhelmed. Research shows oftentimes when people learn about climate, they're overwhelmed and then they go shopping.
Mm.
Maybe they go shopping for green products, but still, because we're so conditioned as consumers, we respond by going shopping. And we're not going to be able to shop our way out of this problem.
Well, when I hear you say we go shopping, what I hear is, okay, I'm going to distract myself.
Yeah.
Shopping is one way of distracting ourselves. You could easily get on social media. I mean, whatever your favorite distraction method is, it's easy to fall into that rather than consider, oh my God, the world is ending and it's my fault.
It's pretty tough to really take that in.
So let's talk about scope here, because we were talking earlier in the conversation, we have this fantastic technologies these days that allows us to extend our perceptions beyond what the usual human senses have. And so our sense of scope is like way bigger than it was even 100 years ago. And here we are as these individual humans. We know that our influence is like really, really local, like small. Of course, there's the butterfly effect, but that stuff is like non-linear. That's outside of our perception.
Yeah.
Our perception as humans is that I've got a limited space of influence. It's a question I've got. How do you jibe that with, oh my God, the world is ending and it's kind of my fault? How can we find that middle ground of I'm doing what I'm capable of doing as one human and like, let's call it enough?
And I think that's the technology and our connectivity gives us the ability to multiply our actions, right? So I can wake up. So one practice I've been doing, I have an app. Technology is part of the problem, but it can be part of the solution, right? So I have an app called Climate Action Now. And I wake up every morning while I'm drinking my coffee and I take climate actions, which could be tweeting, sending emails to politicians and legislators, trying to influence celebrities. The app kind of packages it, but it's connecting all these climate organizations and kind of filtering it through the app to make it really easy to do it. So it's one way to do it. So my small actions, but then they're magnified because I share them. I invite my friends to do them. I know I have friends who are really concerned about the ocean, for example. So when one comes up that's related to the ocean, I'll send it to that friend. So the ability to kind of magnify our actions through our connectivity is also unprecedented, right? And teens know about it, right? Everyone's thinking about going viral, TikTok, we don't even know what they're doing, right? But that there is this opportunity to multiply our actions and communicate. Can we take our time that might be spent in the garbage side of the internet? Can we shift some of that into this activism space where we're reaching out about climate concerns? Maybe we take on something that's very close to our own hearts. Maybe it's each of us has a motivation connected to some aspect of the natural world. Maybe that's even closer to us. Do we work in that space, but also share, invite others? And I'd love to see us as acupuncturists, and we don't connect on professional levels together enough, right? We have a lot of professional associations that are very atomized. We have conferences which aren't really happening right now, but could we inhabit that space where we connect with other practitioners and share things? I think that's a big part of it. It's by leveling, yes, there's our individual actions, but how we communicate and encourage others. Do we create social contagion? Do we inspire others to take these actions? Do we build a collective response in that way?
Well, you just used a really interesting word, social contagion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's like, okay, we've got a virus. You can use viruses to be helpful.
Yes.
Right? I think they're using viruses to cure cancer or something like that these days, right? I mean, there's ways that viruses can be useful. Of course, there's ways viruses can be very not useful.
Yeah.
So social contagion, I hear that and I get it. It's like, okay, can we do something that like sparks consciousness? Can we do something that sparks a movement? Can we do something that brings people together in a collective way that has an impact? But is it a but or an and? I'm going to say it's an and. And, as with any technology, if it goes off the rails and goes the other way, it's a little bit dangerous. We're literally playing with fire.
Yeah.
Of course, we humans have been playing with fire for a long time.
And the world is burning. I mean,
well, I was just saying, I have springtime in my house right now because I have fire going in my house in a controlled, safe fashion. But every now and then someone's house burns down.
Yeah.
So as we're doing this, as we're coming together and sort of bringing our voices into alignment or amplifying them, how do we avoid like burning shit down?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Right? Because collective voices is powerful and it's useful, but like what's the line between helpful amplification and a mob?
Right. What's the line?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're talking about the group I'm thinking about is Chinese medicine practitioners.
Okay.
Right. Chinese medicine practitioners. Right. And so perhaps we have a practice, right? A meditation practice. Perhaps we have a Qigong Tai Chi practice. Perhaps we have a practice of cultivation. And I think we teach this in the schools. We encourage this. We have maybe a stronger ethos of this as practitioners than other types of medical professionals. When I interact with Western medical professionals, I don't see a strong culture of self-care or much awareness about their own cultivation in that group, right? I think that for us, the idea of stepping forward more collectively and articulating some of this, I guess part of me just sort of trusts the ethos that we have of self-cultivation and balance that could be protective against, like what you're saying, burning shit down. I mean, I do think there's some things about modern life that should be burned down, metaphorically speaking. But essentially, we're there to encourage people to live in more balance and harmony, usually becoming more yin. Isn't this sort of essential advice for the average modern American to be a bit more respectful of yin?
I hear that a lot, and I think I used to believe it. I did used to believe it. At this point, I don't.
Okay, where have you come to?
What I've come to is not that we need more yin. What we need is to focus on balance. What we need is to focus on that there are appropriate amounts. And it's easy to say, well, we need more yin. I did my more yin for the day, so check. Good for me.
Right. I meditated for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I did my meditation. Check. I made the world better. I mean, maybe you did. Stillness usually helps. And especially over time.
Yeah.
It gives you a kind of momentum. I think it's one thing to say we need more yin. It's another thing to investigate what is balance and to be respectful of appropriate yang as well. I'm using the word appropriate yang. Yang often gets a bad rap these days.
Yeah. Yang can be demonized. It goes with toxic masculinity, right?
How come we never hear about toxic femininity?
Well, phlegm is the mother of 100 evils.
There you go. So, again, and I don't have answers.
Yeah.
I used to think I had answers. One of the great things about getting older is I realized that my answers cause me new problems. So I'm very cautious.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, I study with Lonnie Jarrett regularly, and I'm a big admirer of him and his work. And the last class I was taking with him, he was talking about one of his teachers who said, when he first got into Chinese medicine, he thought there was nothing that couldn't be cured. He could fix anything with Chinese medicine. And then after practicing 10, 20 years, he came to the conclusion that there's nothing that can be cured, right? As you say, right? Yes, you can kick the can down the road, but, eventually yin and yang are going to separate. Yang is going back up to the heavens. Yin is going down to earth, and we can't really change that. We can't change that.
Well, we can't change that we die. And we can't change that there are the cycles of birth and death.
Yeah.
And this is one of the beauties of Chinese medicine that I think is wonderful and worth remembering, because we talk about Tian Ren Di, right? Heaven, person, earth. So we, in this life that we have at this moment, this consciousness that inhabits this physical reality, have an opportunity to make some choices about how we work with that unformed potential of heaven and that, frankly, at times really oppressive aspect of earth because it's formed. And when it's formed, it just doesn't change much. You can change it a bit, but you're kind of trapped in it. So we live with these polarities, and it's our job as people to investigate that, explore it, maybe be playful with it. You know, as the kid says, if you got if you got privilege, like, use it well. Like, don't squander it. If you got something, don't squander it.
Yeah.
And so we can get really nihilistic about it. Well, it's all going to separate anyway. What the hell? You know, let's have another beer. Or we can like investigate. Wow, look where this beer came from. It came from like thousands of different interactions, none of which had to do with me, but I get to enjoy it. Lucky me. And so that's why I'm very curious these days about investigating what balance is, knowing what proper yang is, knowing what proper yin is, like what's called for, like in our treatments with our patients. What do they need at this moment? And more importantly, how do I figure that out? Am I listening well enough? Am I listening properly to find out what they're asking for that maybe they don't even know they're asking for?
Yeah, where the rubber hits the road for us, right? That's what we're doing. And the beauty of like, we're treating how the client's presenting right now, right? We're supporting balancing them right now. And we're not even doing it, are we? We're facilitating it, we're witnessing it, right? But I do think that in our moment right now, when it's becoming so obvious how out of balance the planetary system is, I think that there is work for us in articulating that connection with the patient, somehow articulating, can we bring into the treatment room this connection of what's going on there, the personal imbalance with the planetary system imbalance. I think to me, that's kind of exciting, where we're like, it's not just about your own individual healing, what we're doing here, even in the treatment room. It's not just this one patient.
So I'm curious about a boundary here. This is tender stuff. I struggle with this all the time. I used to give people lots of advice. And then I realized at one point, don't give advice if it hasn't been asked for.
Right?
That's never helpful.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It'll make you tired, and your patients will find you annoying. So don't give advice where it's not asked. Michael Mack, shut the hell up. Are they even asking for help with this? It's a question I often ask myself. I see something that would be helpful for you. You know, not drinking those 3 diet sodas would probably be helpful for you. But unless they are really asking for my opinion, I tend not to say it these days. But that's just me. And so the question that comes up for me, because I'm with you, I would love to see people heal in a way that is not just helpful for them, but in a way that connects them to their family, their community, the world. I think that's where healing comes from. I mean, it's not where curing comes from, but it's where healing comes from. That's for sure. Now, and this is a question I ask myself all the time. I've got some ideas about what might make the world better. Am I pushing it on my patients, or am I able to be still enough that when people recognize something, I can go, yeah, I see that too. How do you work with that? What do you think about that?
I love it. I think that, and it goes to our own development, our own integrity, right? Chinese medicine is encouraging us to become a sage in the sense of someone who's always growing, learning, who's cultivating, who's continually on a path of self-cultivation. So we as practitioners, right, we are on that journey ourselves. And I think just by bringing that to the treatment room, right, and not necessarily telling our clients verbally that that's what we're doing, but by bringing that awareness, we influence them. Why do they come to see us? They want to spend time with us. Maybe it's, we're good listeners, or I hope it's more, and that's important. But it's not only that. They want to spend time with us. We are a little more in balance, or we should be. If we're not, then it is exhausting, right? When you go to treat patients and you're feeling really off kilter by the end of the day, it's like you feel more imbalanced, or unless you're able to leverage that to making that interaction benefit you and them. So I think they come to us because we are working on always being in a state of balance or walking this line. And they're inspired by that. That's why they're coming. Yes, we're offering them healing, but we're also offering kind of a vision of personal evolution. And can we do actions? So regarding climate, are we using, and I'm so happy, and I saw that you have a relationship with AccuFast, who I love. I'm using AccuFast needles, and I just love, one, reducing the waste. Two, I've just been like, no more guide tubes. And I switched to pretty much all freehand insertion. And I'm like, actually, I like this so much better. And think of all the plastic I'm not using now.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Oh, and those little tabs drive me crazy. Those little tabs go everywhere.
Hey, it's so nice to really minimize the amount of junk. I'm also telling my patients, hey, I'm using these new greener needles that have less waste. Just one simple thing, but it's an example of like, okay, so I'm trying to have ever increasing integrity in the way I practice and modeling that for patients. I think that's part of how we do it. Also cueing the patient of like, okay, so now, like you said, they may ask, did you put anything in those needles? They think like, are you giving me drugs in those needles? Because I feel so good, right? So it's like, no, you're cueing them. This is you more in balance. What you're feeling is you more in balance. And you can, over time, come to a place where you're more in balance more often. And usually they have to do some homework to do that, right? It's frustrating when the patient.
Stop with the diet soda.
Right? Yeah. Well, I have a patient right now. He's like, I'm like, what do you want out of today's treatment? He's like, euphoria. I'm like, that could happen, but the whole point is not necessarily to produce euphoria.
Well, this is.
And if you want euphoria, it's about how you live. It's not just coming to get a weekly treatment.
Well, this is the essence of addiction. I've got this great feeling and I want to get that again. Right? If you're chasing pleasure, that's going to take you down one path. If you're chasing meaning, it's going to take you down a very, very different path. And you used the phrase ever increasing integrity. That rings a bell for me.
Right? We aspire to that. I think we aspire to that in our medicine, or I hope we do as practitioners of Chinese medicine. And so, and for me in this moment, integrity is also just recognizing the emperor has no clothes. Yes, the climate system is completely out of balance, and we have to make a massive transformation. Being able to hold that, and it is overwhelming, but being able to hold that and see how does that affect my choices? How do I live in integrity to that? And then when we have teenagers in our lives, right? What's the living in integrity, respecting what they're facing in their lifetimes? What are we doing now that supports them having a livable planet? That's what keeps me coming back to this fight. And it's not just them. I mean, it's you and I too.
We're past our pull date anyway. We're not.
We're past our full date. But I prefer to retire in a livable planet. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. No, me too. And that sense of care and concern for our children is, I think that's something that most human beings, unless they've got very serious mental health issues, we all share. Regardless of political stripe, regardless of language, regardless of culture, we care about our children.
We care about our children, and to me, that's one of the most motivating things. In fact, in the climate space that I've been entering and the climate work I've been doing, the message I keep coming back to is I'm a mom. I'm a mom, and I'm fighting for a livable future for my child and his generation. And that's a message I keep including in this work, because to me, that is probably one of the most galvanizing things. And I think even for people who don't have children themselves, they can
get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard not to have a human heart and not be able to get that.
Yeah. Especially, when people have an experience of acupuncture and being more in balance and sort of calming the demands of the ego, they can connect to that of like, okay, I want to live in such a way.
I feel like this more often.
Yeah, I want to feel like this more often.
Yes.
But I want to live in a way that will help make the world be, will protect the livability of the planet. That's the state we're at. And that's what's so hard to take in. Have you gotten a chance to see Don't Look Up?
I did, yes.
By the way? Yeah. So there's just a lot of interest there, but part of it is just like, how do we even talk about this, and how easily people get overwhelmed and turned off by messaging around the crisis? I think that's a challenge,
Well, it is. And I look at this just in my relationships, right? All you got to do is look at your marriage if you got one, or whatever relationship you're in. Maybe you've got a message for your partner. You don't quite know how to get it to them. And you get it to them in some really overwhelming ways, or it comes out sideways and it goes the other way as well. How do we stay present with overwhelm? How do we look at the world and go, oh my God, there's so much here and it's completely overwhelming my nervous system? Well, that's not helpful. If you're in a state of fight and flight, you're not going to be able to make good choices that might be helpful going forward.
Yeah.
Right? If we're constantly working out of anger and outrage, it's hard to build anything sustainable with love.
No. But we know from Chinese medicine, right? Anger moves qi up and out. Anger is encouraging us to action.
Unless it's burning our house down.
Absolutely, right? It's dangerous, volatile, it's the most yang, right?
Yes. Very, very powerful fuel. Use with caution.
Use with caution. But then the grief, I think climate grief, it's something that we don't even want to acknowledge, but I think it's affecting everyone. If you do a little research on climate angst and how there's different terms for it, but people are really affected, and young people. And again, our teenagers, our Gen Z, they're very affected by it. There are people in that age group, and millennials are choosing not to have children because of climate grief, climate angst, right? Just as one thing. So the grief is so interesting. I think that's another thing that we can make space for and articulate and call out that we are feeling this. I feel it just with the loss. How many days have I lost of livable air and breathable air in California already? How many more days will I lose? At what point does California become uninhabitable because we can't breathe the air? There's a current grief and a future grief.
Mm-hmm. Aren't you glad you don't live in Beijing?
Right? It's incredible. Yeah. It's already, how does it affect people's lives and health? It's phenomenal even to ponder that. But there are days in California that we're rivaling, but I know they live in Beijing and in many places in China, they live it all the time.
So when you were a teenager or young adult, right? Late high school, early college, let's frame it there. Were you optimistic about the world or pessimistic?
I've just been steeped my whole life in leaning to optimism. My whole family culture and value was positive thinking, optimism. So I've always, I've been lucky and it's been enjoyable. Growing up though, I came of age during the AIDS crisis.
Mm-hmm.
That affected me, and that was pandemic is not over. That affected me, and I, as a teenager and young adult, I thought a lot about public health. I thought a lot. It affected me, so I was definitely positive about the world, but also very aware of things that were really hard. And it transformed medicine. It transformed the way we have sex. It transformed society, right? And now we have the pandemic. That's another massive transformation.
Well, they do tend to roll through on a regular basis.
Right.
They stir the human pot. 100 years ago, Spanish flu, now it's endemic.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, there's a lot to say about COVID-19, but in terms of climate, it's shown us we can massively change the way we live because of health. We can massively change the way we live to protect health. And that shows that regarding climate, we can make big changes in the way we live with health as a motivator. And I think that's essentially where we're at with the climate crisis is every major public health entity around the world, right? The WHO, the AMA, the Lancet, every health related pretty much in Western medicine is saying the climate crisis is the number one public health threat of our times. So we know that's the case. They're starting to teach about it in medical school so much more, and most med students want to learn about it. The curriculum's lagging. It's another thing I think and I'm trying to do. Our medicine, we need to be teaching about it within the curriculum. But we know that we can change dramatically in the way we live to protect health. So that's another cause for optimism for me. We're learning from this experience, and some of the ways we've changed will continue, like Zoom or these platforms, right?
Yeah.
Virtual meetings. That will continue, and that's a great thing, and that's good for climate.
Sure, because we're not getting on airplanes and stuff. I can't wait till I can get on airplanes more, though. I have to tell you. In all truthfulness.
How about flying less? Can we, rather than not flying, I committed not to fly in 2020 and it turned out to be really easy to do.
Yeah, because there were no damn airplanes.
I did fly in 2021 once. I'm flying less. I'm definitely flying less. 2022, I may fly, but I will fly less than I did before. So I really see that. It's unfortunate. It's such a high impact on an individual level. As an individual person, it's one of the most impactful things we can do. But I'm with you. I know. I love being able. It's amazing. It's miraculous.
Well, and I think about, if I want to fly somewhere so that I can learn something that will help me to help people.
I know.
Okay, well then get on the plane because I'm leveraging that.
Yeah.
But what about flying somewhere because, you know what, I need 2 weeks off and I need to deeply recover. Because if I'm not well, then I can't help others. So which of those is the more virtuous airplane ride? It gets really complicated, doesn't it?
It's complicated.
Yes.
Could you find that deeply restorative place? Could you get to that deeply restorative place by another method of transportation?
I want to go to very, very warm water and I don't want to take a week to get there.
I hear you. I know. It's tough. I've been in terms of flying, I've gone to doing more camping. I've taken some train rides, which were a lot of fun. It just takes more time. It has to do with the slow, right?
It takes more time.
Slow travel, slow medicine, slow food. It takes more time. Yeah, it's tricky. But maybe also, and then I'm thinking about just our clients too. Maybe could we live in a way that makes us not feel like we need to get away to restore ourselves? What is it about your own life that makes you feel like, okay, I've got to escape it. And the only way I can unplug is by going far away from it. What does that look like? Is there an adjustment you could make so there's not that takes away that feeling?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I'd love to travel, and I like to see things that are really different.
Yeah.
But, maybe I could just go to a different part of town that I never go to
Right.
and see something really different. I guess there's that possibility as well. I hadn't thought about that.
And in your region, as in California, I can eat food. I'm not like, I would say I have a different situation, but I can eat food from anywhere in the world within an hour of where I live, like cooked by the people from that place.
Yeah, you're lucky. I live in the
That's
Midwest.
pretty lucky. I mean, I know you don't have that.
Well, actually, we've got some amazing restaurants.
Yeah.
We've got some really fantastic ethnic food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually pretty nice in terms of getting access to many of the things that you would have there in California. We don't have the same landscape that you guys have there. I mean, we don't have the ocean. I mean, oceans are just their own thing.
Yeah.
But we have woodlands and streams. And it's just a different ecosystem. I think different people are sort of attuned to different ecosystems as well. Some people are mountain people. Some people are ocean people. Some people like deserts. Some people can't stand a desert.
Yeah.
So I think you're right that, within our own scope, what can we do? What can we find that's restorative?
Right. And also this thing of like, how we live on a daily basis. Can we find that restoration? And this does go to the side of being, just cultivating more yin. Can we find that restorative activity or lack of activity? So it's not just
yes, exactly. Restorative lack of activity. That's it. Right. Restorative activity. No.
But there are restorative activity. Like in this time of the pandemic, most of us have become more yin in some ways, right? We've connected virtually with people. We've stayed home more. We haven't traveled. So we've become more yin in some ways. And we've lived in a more yin way. I know for me, I've taken up pleasurable hobbies that I'd kind of lost touch with just in that having more space. So I've taken up something I used to love to do when I was in middle school, which is spinning yarn. So I got a spinning wheel and I started spinning again. And it's so satisfying as a visceral, pleasurable, creative, and restorative activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm carving out the time in my day where I'm like, I'm going to spin a little bit every day. It's doing something really wonderful. It's, just like in connecting with something that's kinesthetic, that's not online. We spend so much time online. It's so easy to just keep being online.
Amen to that. Do something kinesthetic. Yep.
Yeah. And also in that space, it's been so thrilling because coming back to that, now I can really see it can be connected to sustainability. So I'm able to get wool from local farms that's raised regeneratively and really connect with the whole. There's a fiber. So you've heard of food shed, right? Eating food from your food shed. In other words, locally grown food. Well, there's a whole movement called fiber shed where we're thinking about getting fiber for textiles locally. And there's just like a whole other meaning in this that wasn't there when or a whole discourse, a whole meaning, a whole connection, and even the idea of like, oh, what is regenerative agriculture? So this is part of where we need to go. Is like, yes, of course we've transitioned to agriculture, right? There's no going back.
No, I do not want to live on a farm.
No,
no,
right. And like,
no,
you don't have to, Michael, but some people have to farm or we won't have any food.
I agree. I do not want to be one of them.
But those people who are farming can farm in a regenerative way that's actually sequestering carbon, right? That is part of the solution instead of part of the problem. That's exciting. It's one of the many solutions. Keeping oil on the ground is like a key one, but also just changing the way we farm, the way we produce food.
Well, and how do we produce energy in a way? This is such a big one.
Yeah.
How do we produce energy in a way that allows us to sustain springtime in our homes? I don't want to live without that. I'm old enough that I remember summers without air conditioners. Not fun, right?
Yeah.
Winter without heat, not fun. Yeah, how do we meet our energy demands in sustainable ways? That's in some ways I envy the kids these days. I mean, yes, there's giant problems.
Yeah.
But you know what's great about giant problems? Human beings look at it and go, I can solve that. Here's an opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah.
I can fix that. I can build something. I can invent something.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I'm seeing that. I'm super proud of my son is going to be an environmental science major.
There you
He's
go.
like drawn, and I didn't push him into it. But I'm super thrilled because he's drawn to this conversations and this work, because I think he really sees that's a huge priority right now. And there's a lot of excitement in that space of, what are the solutions? So
what are the solutions, that we don't have yet because they haven't been invented? But the potential for them, like the circumstances and conditions, are ripe for them being invented.
they are. And there's so many solutions that we already have. We don't have to sort of wait for solutions. We can implement solutions that are already there and then also encourage the development of more. So wind and solar, in terms of energy, wind and solar, they're already so huge. They're already taking off so much in a short span of time. We have that. And yes, we'll need more energy solutions, but there are plenty of sustainable solutions out there already. And can we reduce our need for so much energy, right? Can we individually demand less energy? But I know you're right. No one wants to go back to being complete. Like, we need that protection. We need that protection of the eternal spring, or we do. We're not going back on that. But I think there are ways we can get there a lot more sustainably that are available. One group that I really admire that is totally focused on climate solutions called Project Drawdown. And they're doing all the science on what the solutions are. And the idea of drawdown is drawing down the carbon that's in the atmosphere, or the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere. So an example of a drawdown technology is no-till agriculture. So if you don't disturb the soil so much, the soil sequesters carbon, and it's able to draw it down and retain it in the soil. So it's not just in plants, but it's in the soil itself. Of course, a tree is the ultimate drawdown technology, nature's drawdown technology. And so tree planting, and that's one thing I do see people in our field focusing on. So the Chinese Medicine Forestry Trust is one group of acupuncturists that are contributing to reforestation. So that's huge. And AcuFast is doing that too, right? They plant trees.
AcuFast is doing that too.
Yeah,
they plant trees. You buy needles, they plant trees. The restorative aspect, and this brings us back to our practices in a way. I think it deeply brings us back to our practices because I don't know about your practice, but I know my practice is about helping to restore more balance function. And when people have that, they make better choices for themselves because they have more opportunity. They can see opportunity and they have more strength.
Yeah.
And so that sense of restoration really rings true for me.
Yeah, that's I think it implies that's a part of the essence of healing, right? When we're young and full of qi and yang, right? And as we get older, we have less. We want to feel a bit of restoration of that. We can't go back, right? We can't go back completely, but we arise from the treatment table restored, reconnected, our yin and yang more in balance and harmonized. So we can offer that experience, but then can we also connect that to, what needs to happen on a larger scale, whether it's implicit or explicit? I think there's something. And then can we connect with others? So we talk about and share this idea. Can we connect with other practitioners? Can we level up? Can we work towards this idea of the social contagion, a positive social contagion, rather than spreading the virus, right? We're spreading the virus of really acknowledging, not being in denial about the climate crisis, beginning to use a climate lens to look at everything we do. Can that influence all our choices in some way?
Yeah.
And what are the implications of that?
Well, it's a good question to hold, and we may have to come back at some point and talk about it more.
We may not answer that right now. Okay.
Well, I think some of the best questions in life are the ones that you hold as a question more than grasp at an answer.
Absolutely, right? And then keep coming back to that. So maybe, each day is how do I act in integrity with the knowledge I have. So if I can maintain a sense of the knowledge of the state of the planet right now, and then how do I act that is in accordance with that knowledge? And could ask that each day. And the answer may be totally different each day. But I think that's exciting.
But it comes back to something you said earlier in this conversation, ever increasing integrity. That's my takeaway from this today. Thank you for that. Powerful.
Oh, I'm so glad. I've so enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, me too. Anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we say goodbye for today?
I hope anyone who's been listening today will come away from this and get involved. Look for a group that is doing this work that resonates with you. I hope everyone will find a way to connect with others around it. So it's not just our individual actions, but how can you connect with others? That's my wish and encouragement. And there's so many ways to plug in around this, right? There's so many options, but that I think just that we need to start doing that and moving from just our own individual actions to taking collective actions and connecting with others who are engaged in this work.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the time today. This has been a delight.
I agree. Thank you so much.
We used to burn whale oil for light at night. I suspect the whales were glad when coal-fired generators sent electricity to light bulbs. But then there were the issues with burning coal. So the idea of nuclear power, it seemed like a good idea, but we are now well aware of the long-term problems that brings. Solar and wind are great, but they also rely on some pretty high-tech materials. Those have their own issues. One thing for sure, there is no stepping out of the web of life and no escape from the consequences of our choices and our actions. I wonder how we will solve the issues with climate change. Certainly, this is an area that is asking for attention and creativity. And we can't go back to some golden day because there was no golden day. Now, if we could just find a way to pull the carbon out of the air and turn it into fuel so we could use it again, that might be the perpetual motion machine that would get us out of this jam. I do hope that there is a college student somewhere reading the modern day equivalent of The Limits to Growth and dedicating him or herself to finding a solution. There's a lot of good work that can be done yet in this world. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.